good afternoon. My name is Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios. Welcome to episode 15 of the Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. This thing's coming along pretty good. I'm pretty happy with what we're starting to see here. So today I thought we'd maybe just do a couple little minor things. Since we pretty much since we're getting close. We're getting close to a point where I'm ready to wire everything up and try starting it up. I've never seen this bike run. If you've been following the channel, I found this bike in this basement here when I moved into this house, or the parts of this bike. So we've been putting it back together from scratch. So this thing may or may not run the first time we try to fire it up. But we're gonna give it every opportunity, as best a chance as it's got, so that it fires on the first try. But it might be pretty rough. But that being said, since we're getting close to the point of getting ready to do that, the next big step that we have to do is wiring. So I thought we'd look at the preliminary stuff for that today, in terms of what we're going to do for the wiring harness and how we're going to get everything connected and set back up to at least kind of have all the same functionality as the OEM Virago did. So we'll go and try and see all that, get all that working. So yeah, let's take a look at what we need. Okay, so I guess what we're going to do here today is we're going to look at the beginning of wiring. And, importantly, we're going to go ahead and we're going to clean up some of this subframe so that we can finally install it for good. We're going to go ahead and paint the inside of this seat and the subframe itself so that this stuff is black and matches the rest of that. And then we're going to focus on wiring. So we're going to start getting the wiring installed, mostly so that we can start looking at the ignition coils and get the ignition control module installed and get the gas tank on this thing, and then we'll do fuel. So the wiring harness is going to be a big deal. I'm going to try using most of the original Virago's wiring harness. We're going to basically cut it up and Frankenstein that thing into a new harness, so it should be kind of fun. Yeah, alright, let's take a look. Okay, so first things first. In order for the wiring to work, or any of the electronics on this bike to work, two things have to happen, right? We need a battery. Obviously, you see we have one here. And this is a battery that's a replacement for the stock Virago battery. This is a Caltric BA157. It's a 12 volt, 16 amps, 268 cold cranking amps. Yeah, something like that. So it's a good battery. I've had it for a couple months now, but it's big, it's blocky, and this is basically where it mounts. It's going to require that I build a custom box for it. There may be a way for me to buy a smaller battery, but there's almost certainly a smaller battery, but how much smaller is it really? You know what I mean? So it's probably not worth it. So I'm probably just going to buy or build a custom steel box for this that we can basically just drop this down into, and go from there. But we'll do that in a future episode. But just FYI, this is a huge part of the electric system, obviously. So we'll be doing that over here in a future video. The next step that you need to make the harness work is you need fuses and relays, basically a fuse box. So on the OEM Virago wiring harness, they went to the trouble of splitting up the fuses and the relays. So on the Virago, here's the fuse panel, okay, and it sat kind of like underneath the gauges, like this, up under the steering column, and it had like a little plate on it that said Yamaha or something like that on top of it. You know, it was like a little logo, which was kind of cool, I guess. But the fact is, okay, the fuses are all the way up here, and then the relays are all back here, and they jammed all this bullshit up under the seat. So all this was, you know, crammed in there along with the battery. Here's your voltage regulator. Here's your ignition control module. But so the idea being that, and we're probably not going to do it today, but this is the OEM wiring harness. Everything's here for this bike. Whether or not this wiring is still any good, I mean, I'm sure it's fine, actually. So we're going to try and use a lot of it where we can. Because a lot of it is still good, you know what I mean? So we're going to try using it. But a lot of it's no good, you know, so a lot of these circuits we're going to go ahead and replace. And some of this stuff may no longer be necessary for us. But, you know, a lot of it I don't know exactly what it is yet. So we're going to end up spending some time with the Virago service manual to identify this stuff and figure out whether or not we can delete it, you know, remove it from the wiring harness or replace it. So I mean, these are basically just 4-post relays. I mean, they're like a really old style relay, but that's pretty much all they are. So the idea would be with our new project is that I don't really have very many places to mount the fuses in the front to the steering column. That kind of thing just doesn't do well up there, right? I mean, I suppose I could fabricate something in here, find some type of mount that would mount the fuses up here, and we could keep the, you know, the fuses up there. It's already kind of cluttered right there. You know, a fuse box, you know, would make it as cluttered. It wouldn't be any less cluttered. It probably wouldn't even look that bad, you know what I mean? But so that's an option. We could do that. But I'm having a hard time reconciling where to put all of those relays. Where the fuck am I supposed to put all the relays? I could make some type of bracket here, you know, but with this shock in the way, there's really not a lot of room there, you know. So what do we do? So I came up with a solution last night, and that's this. This is basically going to mount right here, and it's going to solve two problems for me. The first being what to do with all the relays. The second is how to mount the voltage regulator back onto the frame, because with the regular Virago there was some fascia here that acted as the mount for the voltage regulator. This piece here. So this voltage regulator was kind of mounted up here somewhere, right? I think it was like this, and then all this bullshit went up into the seat. But it was mounted kind of like that, and I can't find or don't have, or I don't know what happened to it, but I don't have that piece anymore. So I need some way to mount this thing. So the idea is going to be that I move it onto the bracket here, right? And then we mount this here. Now the voltage regulator will be mounted there, okay? So that solves that problem. The other idea is that I really wanted a way to get the fuses off of the center, or off of the steering column, and hide all these relays, but also update them, because these things are ancient. So I also kind of wanted to update them to use modern Bosch style relays, right? So I thought it might be a good idea to buy like a whole fuse box kind of thing. So this is a pretty nice one, actually. It's got space for 5 of these, 5-post relays that can, I guess, be used as 4-post relays. 5 of those. One of these, giant 40 amp 4-post relays. It's got space for that thing. But then it's also got space for 6 blade fuses, which I really wanted to go with blade fuses as opposed to the tube style fuses that were in the original Virago. So this has 6 spaces. There were only 4 on the OEM Virago, so we'll have 2 extra ones in case we need them. And of course, this piece on the back end is how the how the wiring gets in there. Either way, I thought this was going to be a good idea, and I still think it is. It's like a waterproof box for all that stuff that makes it easily accessible. I still think it's going to be a good idea, and I still think it's going to work real well, but it's large, so like I thought maybe I could mount it up here, but that's too big. It's just too bulky. It looks kind of shitty, So luckily this bracket's going to come in handy again, right, where it mounts up here, and then just like that. So this piece will mount onto this bracket. We'll have the voltage regulator on the other side there, and that'll allow us easy access to the relays and the fuses while installed on the bike. We don't have to do any major modifications or removal of anything to get at these fuses and relays in the event that one of them pops and we need to replace it. So it should make maintenance really easy for this as well. I suppose really all I'm going to have to do is figure out how to seal this real well, which may or may not be an issue, so that it keeps the rain out. But yeah, it's still gonna have to be like that. But yeah, so that's the idea. I made this bracket last night and just kind of bent it in place. I mean, it's not pretty, but once it's painted black, I think it'll look fine, and it's gonna get the job done. Gonna get the job done pretty well. So we'll go ahead and slap some paint on this while we paint the other pieces today. All in all, I think that's gonna end up working out really well. So hopefully that gives me the opportunity to get the wiring harness installed. So that's gonna be a big deal. And as you can see, I've already kind of exploded the harness out, so that I can get started, digging through and figuring out which wires are which. So it should be fun to put together. All right, let's do some painting. All right, as you can see, we've busted off the subframe, the 2 brackets that we fashioned, one for the tail lamp and the other for the voltage regulator and fuse box. And then I've gone and masked off the seat itself so that we could paint the underside of it. We'll just smack it with some of this stuff. A couple coats of this will do fine. Doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be black. So. do it. We'll let it dry, flip all this stuff over, and do it again. Alright, so here are the finished pieces. Seat looks pretty good underneath. That black will really help mask some of that white. You know, I think it'll look better. Subframe turned out real nice, as did the bracket here. Went ahead and mounted the tail lamp bracket in place already, so we'll be ready to pop this on here soon. I figured we'd go ahead and get this guy in place. And to do that, I think it makes the most sense here. Go ahead and drop these guys in. Right, and so that plate will just kind of screw in there. Which will make it easier for us to add in the fuse box here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and mount this thing up in place. This guy, his wiring is just going to stick up and won't basically we're going to end up with a big fat wiring harness that comes up right here along the side, and we'll have to put in a little effort to mask that, but I think we'll be okay. So as for this, it's just going to slide right in place there, and we'll drop the washer, and then these have nylon lock threads in them, so they'll help lock this guy in place. There we go. Nice and tight. You don't want to make it too tight, because these bolts were exactly the right length, I guess. But we want to make sure they get threaded into the nylon at the very least. To make sure they lock. We got real tight tolerance bolts on the bolts there, so that when we mount this big fat fuse box, we're not clashing with it. But it turns out we could have had a little bit more, a little bit more there. That's okay. We'll bend it a little bit further back in place once we get all the bolts in here. So this bolt will work pretty well down here. We're gonna have to find a washer on the end of it and a lock nut. And then we're gonna use this big fat one here and a big spacer. So let's go get a spacer and a washer. Okay, so we end up using semi-long ones, or like the mid-length bolts here and here. We'll use the long bolt up top and a short bolt down at the bottom, and we'll show you why here in just a second. So, short bolt down here is going to have a little cap on the end of it. Not only to help it, prevent it from going loose, but hopefully to keep it, better in place. Now we have the fuse box itself, which we'll take off again, you know, to do the wiring. Go ahead and bend that a bit. Yeah, there we go. So it tucks a little bit better. A little more space to cool. So this guy is just going to slide in there, and then we got this big fat like spacer thing. I was hoping that was going to be long enough. May not be. May not have enough space there. Oh yeah, just barely, but it'll make it. And this guy's going to be a little bit harder to get in there. Oops. But altogether, that worked out real well. I don't really think that's like in there. That one's good. I'm skeptical on that. We may end up changing that up to something else. But overall, there you go. Right? These might actually get like tucked behind here, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Best case scenario, right? Now they got a slightly better way to get up there. Yeah, it works, right? Because if I recall, this guy gets plugged into the ECM up there. Which, now that I'm thinking about it now, it may even be too short to get all the way up there to plug into it. Well, I mean, lengthening this wouldn't be that big of a deal if you end up having to do that. Hopefully not, but we'll see when you get the rest of the harness in. That's the problem with moving stuff around sometimes. But overall, I think it looks like it might work out okay. Right? Of course, we'll see the wires and stuff, you know, but I think that'll be nice because it's mostly, it'll be out of the way of your feet. You know, you won't be hitting it or nothing. I'm a little skeptical about that. Either may need a longer bolt, or a better spacer. But otherwise I'm good with it. That's pretty good. So, in terms of the subframe, I want to get this back on, but there's a kind of an order you have to put it in, put them back together. That being, the subframe needs to go first, then the gas tank has to come on, and then the seat comes on last. So I'm going to go ahead and mount the subframe up, but we're going to leave the seat off. And you'll notice it just kind of fits flush against that inside this little thing there. You know, flush against the frame, and then, yeah, inset in that piece. Okay, and here we are with the tail lamp back on, the subframe's fully installed, and then of course our fuse box and voltage regulator bracket set up here. I think this turned out pretty good. Hopefully we don't have to lengthen this harness any, otherwise we might consider moving that thing again, which I didn't really want to do, but we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Otherwise, I feel pretty good about the subframe. I'm excited to get the seat back on so I can spend some more time sitting on it. You know, I'm hoping that I can get it to start feeling good. In the next video, we're probably going to be looking at getting the battery box together. We're going to get the battery box together, and we're going to start, you know, getting the wiring harness in place, so that we can start getting, say, maybe all the lights working and everything like that. You know, so hopefully real soon, that's coming on the dock. I guess that about wraps us up for this. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, maybe hit the like, subscribe button down there. You know, do that thing. Maybe check out my game Ethereal Legends on Steam. That'd be real cool of you. And hopefully you'll stay tuned for the next episode. Alright, thanks.